Okay, this is February 9th, 2014, and this is Penny and Jacob, and we're going to do a reading from the Enigmatic Monster Project. So stay tuned for more. Do you have any last words before we take the plunge, Jacob?
God help us all.
As John would say, let's get this friggin' train wreck started.
Keep it monstrous.
Oh yeah. Oh dear. And by the way, we're the only two people here, so we're gonna make this as bad as we want. That's an interesting chain thing. I guess it goes all the way down. Or, I don't know, that doesn't really make sense. Are they gonna tell us to go up or something? No going to sleep for you. Hopefully the battery just doesn't decide to die. It's at 99%, but you know how sometimes a cold... It'll be fine though, but that'll suck. Oh my gosh, it sounds so much more legit when they say it out loud. Okay, I guess we can go out now.
Maybe?
Yep. Alright. Oh, there's nobody there!
You can take off the stand if you like.
Alright.
Walk up to it. It's up to you.
Oh my gosh, there's nobody here. Hi everybody, I'm Penny and this is Jake, and we're here on behalf of the Enigmatic Monster Project. So before we begin reading our stories, we're going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. So the Enigmatic Monster Project is a free project, and basically in a nutshell it's about the enigma known as the monster. It is comprised of designers, photographers, and authors, all of whom strive to provide the public with free entertainment. So currently we review classic horror stories, comic books, and we provide a bi-weekly podcast. And we also write original fiction, which we compile into an ebook that is free for the public to enjoy. So if anyone's interested in looking for us, just search on Facebook for the Enigmatic Monster Project. And to start us off is Jacob Zachariah, and he will be reading an awesome story. So let's get this train wreck started, shall we?
Yeah. All right. So first up, we have The Meeting by John. On an autumn night, when the wind was erratic and cold, in a place that was far from prying eyes, there took place a meeting. Just as it did every year on the same night, as far back as anyone could remember or even attempt to. It was illuminated by only the moon, full and large in the clear, dark sky. It lit up in the entirety of the meeting place, a clearing next to a mountain, which height was nigh unimaginable. The meeting took a while to get underway. Some arrived early, some late. They came from all over the earth, from back alleys, sewers, swamps, to castles, great forests, and deep sea chasms. Some flew with wings, some through sheer will. Some walked on their own 2 feet, some on countless feet. And some just appeared, bending space and time with a thought. But all had a connection to this place, this clearing next to a mountain wall. They grouped together at first by respective homelands, with only a few most bold who dared to mingle. Soon enough, as there always did, the crowd became thoroughly mixed as the ice was broken. Time seemed to slow to a near halt entirely as they chatted with each other. Eventually, things quieted down, and at the stroke of midnight, as if on some unspoken cue, all those gathered ceased making any noise at all. Those who could see looked at each other. Those who couldn't or wouldn't simply waited. The full moon hung still in the air. It seemed like an eternity until the silence was broken. A large lupine creature scratched at the fur between his shoulder blades, standing 7 feet tall and bare from the waist up, pants ripped and torn by its bulk, with yellow eyes surrounded by pure blackness. So, shall we start then? The crowd murmured, heads were nodded in agreement, signifying a resounding yes. Something with scales and bulbous orbicular eyes asked, "Who's first?" with its large lips trembling as they moved. A pale, strong hand with neat, talon-like nails placed itself on the scaly shoulder as a thick Romanian accent said, "I would like to honor this year aquatic law." The thing with scales turned and saw a middle-aged man with a long, thin black mustache and fine clothing, wearing a long crimson cloak on his shoulders. It shrugged off the hand with an uneasy look at the utterly pale gentleman, who gave a hearty laugh at the action. He strode towards the center of the meeting place. The only thing that betrayed his poise and calm were his four pronounced canine teeth, and his eyes, which were completely bloodshot behind his black circular shades. The one in red spoke once he reached his destination. "Good evening, my compatriots of the shadows. We are here once more to hold our contest, to determine who among us is the most terrifying. Whose kind can strike fear into the innermost parts of humanity? And, since I have the floor, I nominate my own kind. I claim supremacy in the realm of fear for all my people. For the Vricolas, Strigoi, and Savazanan, none can strife and woe with those who drain blood from the living, like we proud Nosferatu, all cower at our thirst." A smattering of murmurs from the crowd. The lycanthrope who spoke first bared his teeth and emitted a low growl as he barked. "You cannot claim supremacy that way, leech. My people are feared in the same fashion." The crimson-clad Sanguiside's brow furrowed as he scoffed at the rebuke. "Compared to mine, your people," he spat out the word, "are nothing but mongrels who mimic their betters quite poorly." It was not unheard of for such problems to occur at the meeting. The original nearly all started out with a bloody fight and only ended when all gathered lost interest in trying to knock each other out. Because where's the fun in trying to kill someone who cannot die? With a snarl and his lupine ears raised upwards, the wolfman sprung forth at the red target, knocking away those ahead of him. The oh-so-proud bloodsucker charged forward as well, red coat billowing behind him, eager to rend his challenger to pieces. They were both knocked back. Suddenly, an unforeseen force separated the two before revealing itself. Those gathered heard a voice which sounded neither male nor female, more of a collection of many echoes. "We, incorporeal and intangible, are the true victors," stated the near-transparent, twisting shape of light. It shifted and twitched, making a faint noise of static. Jittering, it continued as its form flickered in and out of sight. "Our kind is a most universal fear, spirits doomed to linger on this mortal plane." Only a few times in and no clear winner was in sight. Those who could speak spoke their piece. Some screamed and shrieked. A few clicked and chittered as their segmented eyes saw all. Those who could not speak communicated through proxy or telepathy. The elder ones dreamed their words to the minds of all in attendance. All points from all beings were understood in one way or another. Such was the way of the meeting. There was more conflict as the night wore on, of course. Conflicts occurred both verbally and physically. Shapeshifters were strangled, spirits were admonished, and giant irradiated lizards bled. The meetings were becoming more and more like this with each passing moment. Posturing, insults, and violence, it amounted to nothing, like the year before, and the year before that, and so on and so forth. Through all the madness, noise, and viscera, only two had yet to do nothing. Standing, seated, ironically, in the only spot with any shadow, under a slight overhang of the great mountain next to the clearing, the lone figures were nearly impossible to notice. They barely moved, only watched. They never looked at one another. Their breathing was quite rhythmic, nearly in perfect sync with each other. Their kind had been to every meeting, and all that can be sure. As the meeting went back and forth, and time again, as creatures of darkness quarreled, the two did seem to grow slowly restless. Their body language switched. The one who leaned on the large stone wall behind him then removed himself, dusted off his shoulders, and back very quietly. The one who sat on a small stool stood up, lightly scratching the side of her neck. Their faces were stoic. The man finally looked away from the meeting towards the moon. It was almost directly above the clearing now. Looking to his cohort, she looking down to him, they said nothing, but knew it was finally time to act. The meeting was finally calming down, at least in a physical sense. This is how every meeting went. After the gruesome violence and bickering, then it came to a relaxed state, followed by every man that had gathered, simultaneously giving up and leaving. Another meeting with no winner, another pointless match. Then, from the solitary shadow corner, came a twin clearing of throats, causing heads, tendrils, and things without names to turn and become silent. "I'd forgotten they were here," said the pale gentleman in red, his accent quivering for what may be the first time in his unlife to nearby Wendigo. It concurred, while hungrily and fearfully gnawing at its own gangly clawed hands, which smelled of decade-old rust. The hunger spirit looked somehow even paler, though it was difficult to tell, with it already being dead. The two emerged from the shadows with the bright glow of the moon. Finally, their appearances were revealed. The man was short, wearing a black-gray suit with fine black pinstripes. It matched his hat, which covered his cleanly bald head. Dark circles were under his eyes, creases on his face showing his age to be in the late 40s or early 50s. A thick, neatly trimmed beard with a triangular look adorned his jawline. The woman wore a suit of similar pattern, though black with gray pinstripes. She was much taller, nearly 7 feet to his 5'9". Her complexion was like that of an olive. Her curly hair was tied into a loose ponytail. The two kicked up dust as they walked. Their expressions shifted. They now sported smirks, as if they remembered an amusing anecdote. The air hung thick with pure confidence. In the center of the meeting place, they casually turned and scanned those surrounding them. The muttering died down, the whispers ceased. Taking a cigarillo package from inside his jacket and a lighter from his pants pocket, the man began to smoke. Inhaling deeply, he slowly cracked his neck to the side, removing his hat and exhaled. Breathing out a cloud of opaque smoke, the man began to speak. "Greetings. On behalf of my partner and I, to all those gathered, our utmost respect to every being here." He looked around at his audience. He met their eyes, if they had them. "And with that," he continued, "I must say that each and every one of you, as well as those you represent by proxy, are wrong." That got their attention. A scaled woman hissed in unison with her hair, which coiled around her. The sheer audacity of the statement, causing even the great old ones to stir in their slumber as if angered by a dream. The woman interjected, "Perhaps my partner was a little too blunt in his statements. Perhaps what we should have said was that we disagree and would like the opportunity to make our case in hopes of swaying you all with our reasoning." She chose her words very carefully, though not out of fear, more so out of respect, like one shows to an elderly relative. May we go on? The crowd of creatures became utterly quiet. Their silence was a signal to continue. She thanked them, undoing her ponytail, quickly shaking free her hair and relaxing more. We claim victory in this contest for all humanity. Simply put, none instill more fear than us. As she spoke, the old vampire seethed with blinding rage. To him, she was at best a food source, and at worst another bride. How dare this meal speak that way, he thought. His anger was not well hidden. His bloodshot eyes were now pure crimson, lacking pupils. Deep lines appeared on his formerly handsome face. With a mighty roar, he shouted, "Enough!" With his mouth now full of sharp teeth like that of a great shark, and his tongue was now long and pointed. "You're but cattle to our kind," he said with a voice that could shatter the ranks of an army. "How could you possibly win our contest of fear?" He lunged forward, but a creature with the face of a Greek woman and the body of an emancipated cow held him back. Fingers.
Yeah, it's cold.
With the help of a constantly weeping Scottish ghost. Shrugging them off, the vampire seemed to calm down as he returned to his former appearance, though every few moments he'd twitch with pure white-hot rage. A cloven hoof stomped down with a resounding crack. A tall figure strode into the crowd with the head of a horse and limbs too scrawny to support such weight. It spoke. The old bloodsucker has a point. The two man-shaped creatures moved forward, both wrapped in cloth and wearing long coats. One, to give himself an appearance, for without it, he would be transparent. The other wore such rabbits to keep his dusty remains together. The first one spoke of his piece, his West Sussex accent affecting nearly every word. "The king, you and I agree with the new king fellow. How can you, the very entity we all seem and seek to frighten, win this contest?" Thus left the ancient bandages of the old pharaoh nod his agreement. The vampire shoved away the two who held him. "Speak when your betters ask you something, morsels." The woman readied herself to continue, but the short man held up a hand to stop her. "Oh no," she thought, "this might not end well." With a trademark clink, the man opened his lighter again and lit another cigarette. He did this devoid of any emotion, ignoring the eyes and ears upon him. After a quick drag, he exhaled in the vampire's direction and looked him square in the eyes, never flinching or blinking for an instant. No mortal had done this since the incident in his second death. "Damn Bowie knives, he thinks you're calling me attack." Scratching at his beard nonchalantly, the short man spoke again. "Our kind wins this contest by default, to say the least." Something with too many mouths parroted the man. "By default?" It echoed the words multiple times. Lowering the cigarette, the man continued. "Yeah, you heard me right. Should I elaborate, or are you all smart enough to figure it out on your own?" There was no sarcasm in that statement. This man really wondered if they could even fathom to figure out his meaning. The crowd uttered amongst themselves. Two floating heads whispered to each other. One whose dangling organs smell of vinegar told the man to watch his tone. His eyes narrowed. "Fine." Continuing, he said, "Humanity can claim victory through default due to a complete lack of competition on the part of the other contestants." Soon the man's vision and hearing were called to question by creatures with no eyes or ears. The irony was not lost on any of them. In perfect, refined Japanese dialect, a second floating head asked if the man was unaware of how frightening their collective visages were. Her mouth was full of fangs, just like a vampire's. In a similar dialect, a beautiful woman who had the legs and abdomen of a giant Nephila crocata spider concurred. "I must agree with my compatriot. The little Nukabuki must be right. Neither you nor your partner show any fear towards us, therefore you must not know who we are, or who you must be ignorant of all fear. We may need to educate you. Despite the language barrier, all understood what she said. Again, such was the nature of the meeting. The man smirked slightly. His partner noticed his tell, a small idiosyncrasy that gave away his true emotion, anger. He clenched his fist tightly, then released it just as quick. They have no idea, she thought. No idea at all of what's to come. A final smoke, and he tossed the cigarello with reckless abandon. It bounced off the ground and onto the feet of the old mummified king, who looked down in disgust and stomped it out as he thought, I used to have slaves for things such as this. With smoke discharging from his nostrils, much like one of the dragons seated at the back of the crowd, he began to move. His smirk became what a person who enjoyed using saurisip would call a capricious grin, so full of self-satisfaction and his own decision to give in to his anger. Oh, I disagree. I feel I should give you all a lesson or two, mainly in reality. The short man gestured wildly as he raged around the clearing. The crowd gave him a wide berth as possible. We win, the man said loudly, enunciating every syllable like an irate comedian, because none of you are here. He stomped suddenly, jerking his head to the right so his eyes met those of the cockatrice in the crowd. His whole body turned towards it, his right hand shooting out to grasp its waddle atop its avian head to force the creature's gaze to meet his. He dared it to turn him to stone, and it tried with all its might, failing miserably to surprise it all around it. I think you're all catching on now, said the man as he released his hold. Turning again, he once more began to move. It's not that we don't know, because we do, pointing the tips of all his fingers inward at his chest. And it's not that we don't know fear, because we are the epitome of it. Epitome. The old vampire audibly plucked at the notion, the most amused he'd been in hours. Turning towards his heckler, do I detect a non-believer in our midst? Let me ask you something. Does the great and fearsome walking parasite fear his brothers and sisters of the shadows? No, I thought so, and I know why. The bearded man stopped right in front of the vampire. He puffed out his chest and chin. He doesn't fear any of you because he thinks that you are just trumped up myths, pretending to be real so you may tread upon the world of the living like his kind does. So arrogant, he won't even consider that you may be one and the same. And with that, the man cuffed the vampire in the back of his hand, knocking him off balance for the first time in centuries. Newsflash, you're a story, a long, drawn-out story. The man's words were razors, driving deep into beings that can penetrate the flesh. Why should I hear a story, any story, when my fellow man is just as likely to torture me to death as he is to greet me each moment? His attention turned to the others, continuing his rant. You're all nothing but stories, art pieces, misconceptions, lies, and faded half-remembered memories, most of which are dreamed up when my people still feared the sun. The woman watched, hating herself for her inaction, but she stood still, remained silent. This needs to happen. It's the only way this will end. Just please, don't push too far, she thought. If it weren't for our fears, none of you would exist, he shouted, nearly frothing at the mouth like a rabid dog. Gone was his grin, his face now full of pent-up malice and truth. Your existence is continued because we make humanity feel better about itself. Some of you are even entertaining Reed. He looked straight at the tall figure in black, with the prominent stitches and bolt from his neck, and black shades that hid reanimated eyes. After that, barely any of the creatures met his gaze. Even those without eyes shook at the mere idea of it. The man came upon the slumbering old one, so big it looked as if another mountain made out of rubbery... Can't feel my fingers.
You can do it!
What is this?
Turn that page.
There we go.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Discolored scales and tentacles. Oh, don't even get me started on you. The man ran up and kicked at it with the sole of his fine shoe twice, then stomped off. The force must have been like that of a gnat kissing a whale for all the good it did, but the immense cosmic entity shuddered and clenched his eyes very tight, as if it were a child startled by nightmares. The woman sighed as this continued, seeing how the crowd reacted. It seemed to grow weaker with every word, sadder. They are no longer terrifying. They're just terrible. She mouthed the words, but made no sound, her manners not letting her. She looked at all those gathered, turning around to do so. The wolfman sported a mangy fur coat with gray flecks. The creature of the blackest of all lagoons looked very parched, lips chapped and quivering. The Jorogomos' 8 legs now had arthritis, and her silken webs were frayed and weak. It all happened so quickly. The truth always hurts. It has to. We humans fear all that is different, all that is unknown, and we hate what we fear. The man kept going, his voice never once giving out. He moved back towards the center, near his partner. So we created you, all of you, from nothing, to explain what we don't know, to pretend that we may never know, to imitate the act of creation that we still aren't able to reach concession on. But that didn't do anything. We still fear everything and everyone. And with that hate, he trailed off, his brow no longer creased. Anger left his mind very slowly. He turned inward with his tongue. And with that hate, we destroy. We cripple and maim, all out of fear, all out of not knowing or understanding. The bearded man now looked as if he were at a funeral. Gone was his swagger, his ineffable raving, but his words were still tinged with venom. Only now he felt it too. Why should we fear any of you? Your ideas and lies. He spat the words out, not caring for their taste. That's what all of you are, just ideas. And I tell you this, ideas are not invincible. They fade. They're forgotten as surely as every man and woman will one day die. Such is the fate of all things. He stopped talking, just looked at all of those who were gathered. His look was one of disgust, at them, at himself, and he felt a hand on his shoulder. My partner is right. It was the woman with curly dark hair, looking to his side, looking at her strong features and determined eyes. Her grip tightens and relaxes in an instant as it moves back down to her side and she begins to move. Now it is he who watches her. It's true, you all pale in comparison to us mere humans in the realm of fear. She moves her fingers quickly through her hair, keeping it out of her eyes. Those gathered cringe as she walks near them, expecting her words to be a finishing blow hidden with a kind undertone that will obliterate them and scatter their remains to the wind. We fear ourselves more than we could ever you, she said, her eyes full of sympathy. Then a smile crept onto her face, like the dawn of a new day on the horizon. It was time to turn it all around, thought the woman. Her movement was now so fluid it was like a dance. Turning on a heel near 360 degrees, the sound of gravel scraping under it drawing everyone's attention. That doesn't mean that we don't need you, that you aren't important. Heads perked up, those with ears listened, others read lips, and some read minds. We need you, much like my partner said, but not solely to make ourselves feel better, though that is true. You're a part of our collective histories and cultures. You are the night to our day. What would any of our heroes be without the most vile to fight against? How could we warn our headstrong children not to stray or avoid rapid water without such cruel beings there to try and devour them? Her arms outstretched as she said that, her feet planted firmly. The bearded man's mood lifted. He put his hat back on and grabbed his last cigarillo, though he did not light it. The woman's words were rejuvenating and healed. Dull fangs and broken claws grew long and sharp once more. Fur grew shiny, muscles flexed, and black, dead hearts began to beat harder. Their confidence returned, and so did their horrific beauty. Roars of revitalization broke out, and the bloodlust returned. So please, I implore you, continue. Go out and haunt the shadows, lurk in castles and caves. Stalk streets and roads and drive us to madness with dreams. Turning towards the vampire, who had regained the black in his long mustache and put back his circular shades. The vampire gave her the smallest, most noble of nods as she spun around in her team. Spread pure, unadulterated terror and lavish in our screams, for we need to be frightened as much as you need to be frightened. To the abyss with this contest. There's no need for betters or for supremacy. You're all equals. We are all equals. Long live the creatures of darkness and woe. With that final statement, she exhaled, lowering her arms. The woman looked around to see that she was now alone, save for her partner, who finally lit the last harsh cigarette. She looked up at the sky, judging there to be about an hour before the dawn broke. Putting her hair back into a ponytail, she wiped the sweat from her brow. The man produced a flask from his coat, which she took. Swigging down its contents, a fine cognac, she soothed her parched throat. Wiping her mouth with the back of her hand, she looked at her partner, and he looked back at her. They both smiled and turned to leave. With a final drag of the cigarillo, the man left the unfinished thing on the rock in the center of the meeting place to slowly go out. A smoldering tribute to the night for safe passage.
Just get you to hold that.
And that was The Meeting, read to you by Jacob Zachariah, written by John.
And now I bring to you The Picnic, written by Chelsea, a nice, sweet girl who is very innocent. If you're going out in the woods today, you'd better not go alone. It's lovely out in the woods today, but suffer to stay at home. For every bear that ever there was will gather there for certain, because the days the teddy bears have their picnic. Today was the first time little Katie had ever heard the teddy song. All of the other children, her friends, sang it aloud while they played with their stuffed teddies. Oh, don't get me wrong. Of course, Katie had plenty of toys to play with. Model trains, colorful balls, and pretty dolls. But she has never once owned a teddy of her very own. She has wanted one for ever so long, pleading with her mother and father to buy her one. But they never did, and poor Katie never understood why. But on this particular day, Katie's dreams were about to come all true, because there, laying in the grassy lawn of her own backyard, was a lonely teddy bear. Katie could barely contain herself, but she was also very confused. Whose teddy bear was this? There was no other children around. Her friends were off playing with their teddies and toys somewhere else, surely. She wondered if, maybe, her mother had left this here for her to find as a present. Could it really be true? Smiling, Katie skipped over to where the teddy lay, and before she could say a word, the teddy leapt up and ran off, heading into the woods. Oh dear, she exclaimed. I've never seen a teddy do that before. Come back, Teddy. Katie ran headlong after him, not sure if this was sort of behavioral for a normal stuffed teddy. She was so excited to find her new friend, she didn't even tell her mother where she was going. It wasn't long before young Katie found herself very alone and lost in unfamiliar woods. She slowed down and walked along, calling out to her friend, Teddy? Hello, Teddy? The sun was setting and the woods were growing dark very fast. Poor Katie saw no sign of her teddy and she was ready to give up. But where was home? Panic set in now. Katie frantically tried to retrace her steps. She was running through the underbrush, hoping desperately to see her porch light shining in the dark. Ah, there was a light ahead, dim but peeking up from somewhere just ahead. It was her house, she was sure of it. So So she ran as quickly as her little legs could carry her, tears running down her cheeks. Oh, her mother would be so cross with her when she got back, but she didn't care. She would go home again, warm and safe. Not far now. The light was brighter now. Suddenly, Katie found herself in a little meadow. There was a small table, and the scene was lit by a tiny lantern filled with bright fireflies. Standing before her, black button eyes gleaming, was her teddy. Her eyes went from her teddy and back to the little scene behind them. All around the table were more teddies, all different shapes and sizes. She didn't notice them right away, but as her eyes adjusted to the light, she noticed their faces were deformed. But her teddy stood there, waiting for her. "I found you," she laughed, ready to pick up her teddy in her arms. But out of the corner of her eyes, she saw an empty lantern swinging towards her. After that, she remembers nothing. When she finally comes around, she finds herself in a strange bed. She tries to get up, but she cannot move. Just then, she feels something reach around her and pick her up. It's her friend, Vanessa. Katie tries to scream, but no sounds come out. Vanessa takes her outside and lays her down in a pile of other teddies that look oddly familiar. Before she could try to call out once more, a voice rings out somewhere unseen. Vanessa's mother calling for her to come in for dinner. As soon as the door shuts tight, the teddies begin to move. They get up and stretch. One offers to help Katie up and takes her by the hand and leads her in line with the rest as they march towards the woods. Voices now, as some children run through the yard. All of the teddies, Katie included, drop limp to the ground instantly. What's happening to me, Katie thought. She couldn't make a sound or move at all when there are other kids around, and this scares her. The children play with them until the sun goes down and they all scurry off to bed, leaving the toys out on the lawn with the first light of the stars twinkling. High above, the teddies rise up. A supernatural force pulls Katie along with them, leading deep into the forest. She finds herself again in the mysterious clearing, the table set with a raggedy plague picnic tablecloth. Each teddy with their misshapen forms finds their seat around the table and Katie gets a good look at them all. On the little log stools they sit on, under them there are pictures. There's a little girl about her age beneath one, and then a boy, and another child's face beneath the next bear, and the next. 6 children's faces beam bright smiles from pictures, and slowly Kaylee sees their resemblance in the faces of the bears. There's one last empty stool with a picture lying neatly beside it. Katie stoops beside it and takes a good look at the photo at her feet. It's her, right there, all bright and smiling. And suddenly she understands. The bears are staring at her now. They look as if they're smiling. One of them points to a message carved into the trunk of an old oak tree where the lanterns hang. It read, "Salvation is in the bear, and those who own you stop you. Forgive them and send them to salvation." There's a muffled cry from behind, and Katie turns to see her friend Vanessa, struggling, gagged, and bound. One of the teddies holds a sharp knife and offers it up to Katie, who takes it without a thought. Another bear carries fluff and button eyes, glistening in the lantern light. An empty teddy skin hangs on a low bow off to the right. The bear who led her here shows Katie where to cut, and guides her as she carves out Vanessa's nerves and organs with precision and care. Soon she will be one of them, another teddy. Remember, if you're going out in the woods today, you'd better not go alone. And that concludes our reading of horror stories. We hope you enjoyed that, and we hope you enjoyed our train wreck. Woo! Okay, bye. Woo!
I can't feel my feet.
I think you did a much better job than I did.
Oh,
Ah, hi.
fantastic. That was great.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you. Penny?
Oh, yeah.
It's still going.
Okay. We are now done.
We actually have a little tiny